Welcome back to Off the Bench. So right now we got a little treat for you. We're going to step away for a bit, as yesterday on Jake Sirius' show. Don't know how this is the case, LSU, but that's fine. You know, I'm not mad at you. It's not like we sit here and just like cheer you on and sing your praise all day. Whatever. We can't even get a call back trying to get Brian Kelly on. But Jake did have Brian Kelly on his Sirius show yesterday. And so we will play you that in full, as it's 15 minutes of Kelly diving in to this LSU football program and how spring went and what comes next. So here is Brian Kelly with Jake yesterday.
Coach, now you've been in Baton Rouge for 5 months, and obviously when you take this program over in December, you have a bowl game. There's only 39 scholarship players, and so I know you've had a checklist of things that you've wanted to get done. I'm sure those 5 months for you have been long, and they've also been quick at the same time. So what's that checklist been like for you, trying to make sure you get this football program to where you want it to go?
Well, I mean, I think like anything else, the first thing you do is you take a look at, where are the things, that need to be supported immediately. Clearly the past 2 years were not to the standards of LSU. They were a 500 football team coming off a national championship. Now, there's always mitigating factors in everything, but clearly my charge was to come in here, evaluate what needed to be looked at, and in a lot of instances, it's just raising standards, right? It's just expectations needed to be recommunicated. Organizational health in terms of expectations, roles, responsibilities needed to be redefined, and just get back to the basics, really. Attention to detail, thinking the right way about how we prepare, and so that's that. A lot of that is just touching base with the players, making sure that you've hired a good staff that understands player relations and player development. And get to work, because it's not easy. It's still about getting in there and developing that kind of standard and that kind of culture on a day-to-day basis.
Coach, when it comes to the schematics, philosophically, do you believe to scheme to your players or use the schemes that you've always used?
Yeah, I think I've got a library of offense, defense, and special teams that is deep enough that I'm always going to go to, the player over the plays. And, every place that I've been, I've tried to, suit the player first and foremost. So, football always will be a game that's defined by the fundamentals, right? It's going to be controlling the line of scrimmage. It's going to be tackling. It's going to be taking care of the football. Obviously the game is such that it's in this conference in particular, the SEC it's prolific offensive scoring and skill players, but look, at the end of the day, you saw how many players were drafted off that Georgia team. Defenses are still as important as they were back when you and I played. And certainly the most important thing for me is the players first and foremost when it comes to schematics.
Well, Coach, when you're trying to fill maybe a deficiency you have on your roster and you're going into the transfer portal, kind of what's the process? Is it a position coach maybe that's out there looking? Do y'all have like entire staff meetings to say, okay, here's where we need to add some players. Here's maybe some players that we're taking a look that are already in the transfer portal. Is that kind of a process that y'all go through differently maybe every time? How's that work out?
Well, that's a really good question, because as you know, the transfer portal has kind of taken on a new life of its own where it becomes much more like an NFL model in terms of player personnel. So that actually falls now under, our personnel department. We have a board that has every player from the state of Louisiana that's on scholarship at every SEC school and every Power 5 school. We want to know about the guys that are from Louisiana that did not go to LSU or we didn't offer them. And, that's much like an NFL operation now. Because I think, if you look at it, our guys that we took in the transfer portal had a connection to Louisiana. They have a passion for wanting to be back in the state. For some reason, didn't get offered by LSU. Maybe they were a late bloomer, maybe got overlooked, whatever, didn't fit a positional need, whatever. There's a number of different reasons why, right? But I wanted that connection. And so the transfer portal, you have to be really deliberate, intentional in terms of, using it. Look, you don't want to build your roster on transfers. You want to develop your players as freshmen and build the standards within your program. But we were in a very difficult situation with 39 players, as you mentioned, as they came on the call. And we had to tap into it, but we have to do it wisely. And so I go back to, if we're going to go into the portal, I'd much prefer to go back into it with a connection to the state of Louisiana.
What's your feeling on name, image, and likeness in the first 10 months? Do you think that there's legitimacy to some of this, media mass hysteria when it comes to NIL, or do you think that it's being overblown?
Oh, no. There's some legitimacy. I don't know if any of it's legitimate. I mean, I think, certainly I am in favor of the student athletes promoting their brand and having their name, their image, and likeness. I don't know that we're in a situation now where it's unintended consequences. I don't know that anybody thought that we'd get to the point where, seniors in high school are, having multi-million-dollar contracts, and that, we're looking at guys entering the transfer portal because they want to get paid to play. That's not what name, image, and likeness was intended to do. And so, there's going to have to be corrections. It's not a sustainable model from that perspective. I want to be able to, I want to develop, recruit, retain my players, and, retention, from our perspective is, providing the opportunity for our guys to earn name, image, and likeness opportunities, and that'll allow you to retain your players. I'm not a big believer of, a freshman coming in, having not played it down and having a big contract. That's not good for your locker room. That's not good for anybody. And the same holds true for transfers as well. Now, can they be assisted with travel for their families and relocation expenses? I think that's reasonable. But the huge contracts that we're seeing and those types of deals, I don't think they're sustainable, and I don't think they're healthy for any football team.
Catching up with LSU head coach Brian Kelly here on Off Campus on ESPNU Radio. Coach, you mentioned the state of Louisiana, and obviously per capita almost every year in the NFL, Louisiana, one of the top NFL states as far as where players come from. In this last NFL draft, they were 6th overall, I believe, with 10 draft choices from the state of Louisiana. So obviously talent-rich state. So what's it been like for you, going around the state, meeting all the different high school coaches, going to kind of all the different parts of Louisiana?
Yeah, it's been really good. I mean, the reception has been terrific. It's the flagship university for the state, and being in the Midwest, you had Michigan State, Indiana, Purdue, and Notre Dame. I mean, you're fighting, a lot of different schools, for those student athletes in the Midwest. Ohio State, I could go on and on, and here there's one school. It's LSU, and the high school coaches recognize that. Now you've got to recruit the young men, and you've got to put your time in. But it's a whole different perspective, from that standpoint. When a young man grows up and he wants to be a Tiger, it's in his blood. You take the juxtaposition of going to the Midwest, and it's already split in half between Michigan and Michigan State. It's already got other allegiances between, Notre Dame and Purdue and Indiana and whoever else, right? And so it's a different concept, and for me, it's great, right? You go to Lafayette or Shreveport or Monroe, and sometimes they talk about it like it's another state, but it's only 3.5 hours away. I was used to being in a plane for 2 weeks, so it's been awesome from that perspective, and the high school coaches are supportive, and you just got to go out there and you got to work. And we probably got to do a better job up north. New Orleans and Baton Rouge in this area have been great, but I think we've got to do a better job in retaining players up in that that northern area of the state as well.
Talk with Brian Kelly here on Off Campus. Jacob Hester, I'm Ari Temkin. What are the characteristics you like your starting quarterback to have?
Well, I mean, look, you could put a list of characteristics. You're always, looking for that guy that immediately has the ability to bring others along with him, right? You want your best leaders to be your best players because they're going to bring others and rise all ships, right? But the position requires a skill set, and what that skill set is. I mean, every quarterback is a little bit different. Not everybody's Tom Brady. Not everybody is Drew Brees. Not everybody, has the ability to be a Russell Wilson and move his feet. And so beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but I think there are some musts, and I think one of them is the ability to be accurate with the football. He's got to have a high IQ, football IQ. He's got to know the game. I think he's got to have the leadership skills, and that's just to name a few. Look, I mean, today everybody's looking at the quarterback that has the athletic ability. I like him to keep a play alive. If he's got escapability, if he's got enough athleticism that he can keep plays alive, I think that to me is what most quarterbacks need to do today. They don't necessarily need to run 4.5. That's a bonus. But those are kind of a couple of things that come to the top of my head.
Coach, obviously, when you look at this roster, there's 16, 17 new guys coming in through the portal. Certainly, you've got a class of freshmen, including like some that, guys like Will Campbell that look like they're going to play right away. But what about some of the guys that are from last year's team that have really stood tall to you maybe during the spring and become those leaders, even though there's been a transition, they've just taken that role and really ran with it?
Yeah, I think, there's been a number of guys. I think defensively, Mike Jones has done a really good job taking, a position like the middle linebacker position, which is, it's shortstop, center field, catcher, up the middle. All those guys got to communicate. The center position, I think Turner's done a nice job. Those guys in particular, when there's a communication piece, you really need to see those guys step up. And I thought those two guys on both sides of the ball that are in the middle of our offense and defense of Charles Turner that has done a really nice job. B.J. Ojolari obviously is a gifted player. Mason Smith is a very gifted player. I think those guys are returners that really did a nice job. I think from an offensive standpoint, Miles Brennan did a really nice job. I mean, here's a guy that, has been here a long time, suffered an injury, battled back, had a really good spring game. And the question was posed earlier is like, what do you want to do with your offense? But, each one of the quarterbacks from Nussmeier to, obviously Jaden Daniels and Howard, I mean, they all have different skills. And so when we get to camp, we're going to have to really, put the offense to what they can do. But Brennan's another guy that I think, did a nice job. So I think there's a number of guys that really, helped themselves in the spring. And these next couple of months are going to be crucial. They're going to have to do a great job in the weight room, continue to get stronger. And then, camp will be the separator. Guys will start separating and working towards starting positions.
Did SEC coaches welcome you to the SEC coaching fraternity? Did you talk with all of them or any of them? They reach out?
Oh, yeah. We've had a couple of conversations already about NIL, and we've got a conference call on Monday, and then Memorial Day weekend, we go to Destin for, our conference meetings. So, yeah, I mean, look, we're all kind of grappling with the same issues, and quite frankly, nobody's very comfortable with where we are right now. And I think the SEC has to really take a lead. The NCAA is not going to. We know that. So our conversations really have been, directed at, what can we do as a conference to set a standard, relative to name, image, and likeness that, it's not binding. But, if the SEC is doing it, I think a lot of people will follow.
All right, Coach, we'll get you out of here on a light one. I see that you're on the coach's caravan right now going across the state. How many bowls of gumbo and etouffee have you had to force down? Because everywhere you go, they try to feed you.
I'll tell you, it's kind of an interesting deal. I've never done a caravan before. Last time I think it was at, I don't know, Central Michigan or Cincinnati, where you stopped in every bar and anybody that you could get a ticket to. But I've seen every walk-ons in Shreveport and Lafayette, and the reception's been great. The people have been great. The food's awesome, but you got to be careful because if you eat everything they put in front of you, the weight's going to go up quickly. So I'm being careful there. And they tell me in July and August you'll lose a little weight anyway. So hopefully that's the case.
Oh, absolutely, you will, Coach. I know you've been spoiled a little bit here in Louisiana since you've come to town. It's been way cooler than it normally is. I appreciate you bringing that to town, but it's been unseasonably cold here in Baton Rouge.
Well, I think it's going to change from what I hear, but look, I will pass on the minus 15 degrees and 25-degree wind chill factors and snow for some 100 degrees. So if I have to give something up, I'm okay with doing that.
All right, there he is, the head coach of the LSU Tigers, Brian Kelly. Coach, we appreciate your time this afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Coach.
My pleasure, guys. Take care.
As well. That was Brian Kelly. Real quick reaction here. Nice to hear him say such positive things about Charles Turner. Funny kind of next chapter in the Mike Jones storyline. As remember, last year the story was he wanted to play middle. He wasn't grasping middle. They moved back to the outside. He started to thrive, and now it looks like, well, the journey to Mike linebacker is finally coming together for Mike Jones. So you get a little shout out to the two of the mental leaders of either side of the ball, and then he sounded pretty positive on Miles Brennan there. So it sounds like, without a doubt, entering camp, Miles Brennan in the lead. I still think it's a legit 3-person race. Like I really like what I saw out of Nuss in the spring game. I don't know how he was doing that final week of practice, but I really like what I saw in the spring game. And so while it is a 3-person race, it sounds like Brennan maybe has the lead going in.
Yeah, it did. I mean, he's on the SWAT team that we talked about the other day, the captain's kind of model that they put out there on Twitter. You heard him mention them. He mentioned all the quarterbacks, but Miles was someone. I asked him about returners, like who's returning from this team, because it is hard during a transition. Like I was part of a transition at LSU, and when you lose a coach and somebody new comes in that you didn't sign with, it's like, okay, where do I stand? And there's some guys that when that transition from Saban to Miles was made, it didn't work out for them. And not because really even of anything that the coach did, but they got into their mentals a little bit and they started to worry about so many different things, and they kind of go away a little bit because they just think that they don't fit in whatever model the coach is looking for. So it was good to hear Mason Smith, B.J. Ojolari, Miles Brennan, some of those guys come out of his mouth, because that's who he thinks can be guys on this team.
Yeah, I agree. And I told somebody this yesterday in passing. I do think that even though this will take a while to come to fruition, I actually do believe that Brian Kelly gives you the best chance of achieving the Alabama-esque consistency that keeps LSU fans up late at night. I don't know if he will, but if you just look out there in terms of coaches and resumes and maybe who could accomplish such a unenviable task, I do firmly believe he would be at the top of that list.
And what was it we saw? One of his answers was talking about recruiting Louisiana, and we talked about it. You had a great stat the other day, T-Bob. I think it was he only had 2 players from the state of Indiana that were drafted while he was there. Only 2 of the players, right? So he's a national recruiter. He's had to do this. So think about where he's coming from to what now he gets to do. He gets to go all the different places in Louisiana, Baton Rouge, New Orleans. I'm glad he mentioned, and look, y'all can throw shade, whatever. I'm glad he mentioned North Louisiana, making that a priority, because that gets lost so many times, right? And you have to recruit North Louisiana just like you recruit South Louisiana, because there's talent everywhere. Is New Orleans and Baton Rouge going to have more talent? Yeah, they absolutely, more people, more talent. But like a Will Campbell, like you can't let a Will Campbell
There's a reason why he mentioned
go anymore.
Monroe. And I would say that Will Campbell is almost the sole reason.
Right, one of the best players last
Monroe.
year in Shreveport, didn't end up at LSU. Like you've got to make sure that you're in that part of the state, right? We always joke about it. Like there's some players in Manny, Louisiana, right now. Like, really good football players, go get the kids from Manny. Make it a true lockdown of the entire state.
Gotta go get Tackett, Bo.
And look, and this is an opportunity he's never had before. So, look, I'm looking at NFL draft just this last year. The 6 most players were taken from Louisiana. They had 10 players drafted. That's only behind Texas, Georgia, California, Florida, and Ohio, right? And though, like, per capita, man, Louisiana's got the Jimmys and Joes. So you can go dominate your state and then use what you've done for the last decade as far as a national recruiter to go outside, because you've had to, but you still had those relationships, which is important. Go do that. Don't make it the bulk of your roster. Say you sign 20 kids from Louisiana, 5 from somewhere else. It's a pretty good formula. Whatever, obviously 20 kids is a lot from Louisiana, but you know what I'm saying? Like, get a bulk of your class from Louisiana and then go spread out and get them elsewhere. Texas,
if you're going
kind of
to
extension.
win a national championship at LSU, the foundation is built through Louisiana kids.
Yep.
Every single one has been, and every single one will be. Coming up next, we'll probably have a bit of a shorter segment. I do want to talk about maybe some NIL new guidelines that could be coming down the market, a push from ADs real quick, and then we'll get to Matt McMahon after that, as the Phoenix himself is coming on here to talk about the job that he's been doing. So keep it locked here on SCB.